Alexander the Great was considered one of the most successful military commanders. In his lifetime, he was able to conquer so many countries and bring them into his empire. But many wonder, was Alexander and his empire considered Greek? We believe that him and his empire should be considered Greek because of all of the Greek customs that he spread across his empire. And his father Philip was also considered to have united Greece. Many of the Greek city-states were divided and fighting, and by conquering them, Philip settled down the disputes and united them once again. And Alexander continued his father's work after death. As he went along and conquered many other empires, he spread Hellenism. And without Alexander doing this, many aspects of the Greek culture might not have stayed in Greece or would have been forgotten. Aristotle, Alexander's tutor, taught him many aspects of Greek culture and its history. Aristotle was impressed on how dedicated Alexander was to spreading Greek culture. Hellenism was a term that Alexander created for Greek culture, as well as mixing it with other cultures. Alexander did not force the Hellenistic culture onto other empires he conquered, but allowed the Greek and whoever's empire he conquered cultures to mix together and to be able to learn from each other. Alexander encouraged many of his soldiers to marry Persian women when they conquered Persia, so that both Hellenism and Persian cultures would be spread around the empire. The capital of his empire, Alexandria, became the main center of Hellenism and Greek trade. How would this make Alexander and his empire less Greek when he was very passionate about spreading Hellenism, as well as learning about other cultures? Today you will hear from a Macedonian citizen, one of Alexander's wives, Philip II, and Alexander himself. They will all share their point of view on why we believe that Alexander and his empire should be considered Greek.
If you don't mind me intruding, as I am only a poor citizen from Macedonia, I most certainly believe that my king, Alexander the Great, and my beautiful kingdom are Greek. I am aware that many of my friends and colleagues may disagree with my conclusion, but as an individual born and raised here in Macedonia, I believe I have the best, most well-rounded perspective on this subject. See, I was born around 30 years ago. At this point, King Philip II, Alexander's father, was toward the end of his reign, but until then, he'd been elevating our military presence and creating strength and pride for our little kingdom. Ever since he'd conquered the southern Greek city-states such as Athens, Sparta, and Thebes, life in Macedonia had changed, but only slightly. It wasn't until Alexander came into power when things took a turn, for the best in my opinion. One of the most surface-level reasons as to why some still consider Macedonia as not Greek is due to our language. For years we have spoken a Greek dialect, a language which was a distinct and particular form of Greek, resistant to outside influences and conservative in pronunciation, according to Nicholas Hammond. During the 4th century BCE, we finally gave in and adopted the Greek language as recommended by our king. It streamlined language throughout all of Greek city-states, allowing trade and public administration to run surprisingly smoothly. I was against this whole language change at first, mostly because everyone else was, but now I truly believe the Greek language is best used in Macedonia. We are part of an empire now, a Greek empire. We should celebrate that. To anyone still concerned with the continued use of Greek language here in Macedonia, first, let me emphasize that no language was ever forced onto us Macedonians. Alexander and his soldiers continued to use Macedonian tongue, even late into his Asian endeavors. But eventually, with an army filled with soldiers of all backgrounds and cultures, Alexander was thoughtful and strategic by using a streamlined, widely used language that made complete sense to Alexander and everyone in his infantry. By using this language, administrative and militant duties became increasingly easier to manage, and further expansion of Alex's international empire continued. I know all us Macedonians love our king, especially due to the great power he and his father brought to our wonderful homeland. So why so suddenly turn against him and his Greek ways after he has provided so much for each and every one of us? For so long, so many Macedonians resisted the change of implementing Greek culture as they strongly advocated keeping Macedonian tongues and customs. I understand that for many citizens, these traditions hold a certain significance in representing our kingdom. In my recollection, These same people were advocating for Alexander to be king, as he represented everything beautiful, strong, and new. We were once thrilled for our king's son to be tutored by Aristotle, one of the most enlightened teachers alive. We all knew he was Greek, yet we trusted him through his very Greek ways to teach our great leader. Now Alexander has taken these brilliant ideas and implemented into our society. Personally, I am an advocate for positive change. Why not reach toward greatness by following in Greek footsteps when given the opportunity? What I think most of my anti-Greek friends struggle with is the fact that we adopted traditional Greek languages and customs rather than developing our own. What I don't understand is why this is. We've implemented so many traditional Greek customs and in reality, not that much has changed. From my perspective, the resistance is purely derived from selfishness. What I believe so many of my fellow citizens fail to understand is that we've been blessed with such amazing kings we've longed for until this point. We've praised their military endeavors and celebrated their victories. Why not trust them in their actions locally as well? Alexander wanted to expand our economy, building marketplaces, temples, and theaters for us Macedonian citizens, all derived from Greek economies. His victories brought attention to our kingdom, bringing new settlers who expanded our scope of laws, art, and literature. They only want what's best for us and our kingdom, so as a loyal citizen, it is imperative that we accept this fate and use it to our own advantage.
As one of Alexander's closest advisors, I'm in full support of how he has handled his empire. Many people criticize the decisions he's making, but that is because they cannot see his great vision as I can. Citizens look to claim that Alexander is no longer Greek, that he has forgotten his ways in taking on foreign wives and customs. These people forget who Alexander is. Alexander has a great reputation, of course. As everyone knows, he has never lost a battle. He's a skilled warrior and strikes fear into the hearts of all who oppose him. However, if you remember, Alexander's chosen strategy first lies with wits and communication. As a disciple of Aristotle himself, Alexander grew up educated with a passion for culture and history. Level-headed, he would not respond to violence from his own father, only reason and persuasion. The same can be said for his approach with Persia. For a long time now, Greece has only known revolts and resistance from the lands we conquer. As the great and knowledgeable ruler that he is, Alexander has found a way around this. Through dressing as they do and adopting their customs, Alexander has proven himself to be trustworthy and a credible person to the Persians. He's appealing to them in a way they may understand, so that he may teach them in turn the greatness of Greece. There's also unrest among some surrounding Alexander and our soldiers' decision to procreate with the foreigners. I'm sure most have heard by now the rumors surrounding Alexander's lineage. Our great leader has claimed himself that he is descended from the likes of Achilles, Heracles, and Zeus himself. Is there no greater Greek than the offspring of the king of the gods himself, regardless of whatever else could be mixed in? I myself have married a Persian, and we've had children. My children are Greek because I am Greek. There seems to be a misconception that we will become less Greek through marrying the foreigners, but they are not able to make us less Greek. Instead, we are making them more Greek. In some cases, we have gained connections in Persia even without marriage. When we conquered the Persian city of Issus, their leader, King Darius, fled the country without his family. Shamed by his actions, his own mother disowned him and has since adopted Alexander as her son. The Persians' assimilation to our empire has not been a bad thing, but instead an advantage. The Persians have proven themselves to be a formidable enemy, and through our conquest and incorporation of them, the Greek Empire has only grown stronger and better.
Any person that would say I am not Greek would be disregarding history itself. Recall the vast empire that was established during my reign. Did I not unite the land under the Greek language? Did I not establish a common currency? Did I not spread our culture to every inch of this very land? No, as my armies conquered land after land, we left behind a trail of Greek culture that would last forever. If you're not convinced of my contribution to Greek culture, you need look no further than the educational centers that I established in my colonies. As my army conquered land after land, we established colonies in their places, and in each of those colonies, we established schools. Schools that taught the populace Greek culture and the Greek language. These schools laid the groundwork behind all modern Greek thinking. Furthermore, because we taught each of these colonies a common language, they were all able to communicate with each other long after my death. As a result of this communication between colonies, which I'd like to remind you consisted of people who originally hailed from different cultures, Greek culture thrived as various knowledge from different cultures was pulled together, whether it be mathematics, architecture, or literally anything. Although some of you may try to minimize my role in the establishment of Greek culture and argue that my influence was only minimal at best, because the empire became divided amongst different generals shortly after my death, I believe that the Greek language that I spread kept the land united. My influence never truly left after my death anyways. Take my coins for instance, the Alexander coins. These very coins continued to be produced for 250 years after my death, and are still in circulation to this very day. With Zeus being on one side of the coin, I still influence Greek culture to this very day. By conquering everything in my path, and establishing schools and colonies in their place, I, Alexander the Great, revolutionized Greek knowledge and culture. Yes, it's true that during our expedition, we have picked up foreign customs along the way, and even mingled with the foreigners, and wore their clothes. However, to use this as a reason to deny my empire as Greek is ridiculous. After all, we were the one to spread the Greek language far and wide across the nation. We were the ones to unify the people. In fact, I'd go as far to say that calling myself Greek would be an inaccuracy. Rather, it would be more apt to say, Greek is Alexandrian, as the empire that I founded is the very roots of Greek culture. Anyone who does not identify me as Greek is not Greek themselves.
Hello, I'm King Philip II, and I'm the father of Alexander the Great. I was a great military man, and I even turned Macedonia into a force that all should fear. But I wanted more. I wanted to conquer the Persian Empire. Who else didn't, you know? When my son turned 13, I sent for the great Greek philosopher Aristotle to tutor him in literature, science, medicine, and philosophy. When Alexander was 16, I went off to battle and left him in charge of Macedonia. And during that time, he took his opportunity to prove his military worth and beat the Sacred Band of Thebes, a supposed unbeatable army. I was assassinated in 336 BC, and at 20 years old, my son took the throne and killed all his rivals so he couldn't be challenged, showing his Greek personality. Alexander was all for Greek life and Greek traditions. He really cared about his homeland. He even stopped a rebellion from happening in northern Greece. Once he felt that Greece and Macedonia specifically were secured and that he was in power, he decided to follow in my footsteps and continue the Macedonian world domination. My son did what I couldn't. He conquered the Persian army. He even went on to be the king of Persia. Alexander had many more great victories and conquered many places, but that doesn't mean he was any less Greek. He was expanding the empire, making Macedonia an even bigger force that should never be reckoned with. There is nothing more Greek than Alexander bringing glory to Macedonia and to Greece. He was loyal and intelligent, another Greek value that we support and hold dear to us here. Just because my son implemented many different cultures into his rising empire doesn't make him any less Greek. Though many lives were lost during his battles for world domination, he did it all for Macedonia, and in return, he made the Greek people more cultured about all the other empires that were taken during that time.